And here we roll with another episode of the Premier Planet Podcast. Rock and Randy, Justin Barlow coming at you, folks. Thanks for tuning in. We're still in the middle of Corona Mania 2020.
I'm sorry there, Justin. I'm sitting here arguing with someone over the effectiveness of HCQ, the malaria drug, in which was FDA approved in 1955 for the treatment of COVID today. But never mind, let's get off that. Nobody wants to hear that shit. We get enough of that crap from... You can't go online without hearing about it.
You can't go online without hearing about anything. People are trying to pull inaccurate information off of Twitter, of all places. Like, that's the place to go, you know?
Yeah.
But whatever. That's we could cut a whole podcast on the frustration with that as it is.
No, I'm with you. So
but actually, right out of the gate, we want to say, you know, thank you all for your continued support during this time. I mean, we've been doing what we can with what we have, trying to get you guys some crowdless tapings for you to enjoy at PPW On Demand.
Some real decent matches.
Oh yeah, and you know these guys, you know, despite not having a crowd, you know, these guys are really working their asses off, you know, trying to bring the best they have, and you know it's translating well onto the screen. And then also, of course, to our patrons on Patreon, thank you guys for your continued support. We hope you're enjoying all the exclusive content we've been trying to bring your way, even with this lockdown that's in place.
And stuff you can't get anywhere else. Truths that you can't find anywhere else.
Yeah. And might as well just send a big thank you out to Savio Vega again for being on last week's episode. I mean, I learned, I went into it wanting to learn a lot, and I definitely learned a lot. And then, you know, being a wrestling fan growing up in the 90s, that was a cool experience for me to, you know, to be able to be a part of and hear Savio's side of the story. Hear all of his stories from his time in WWE, where he was a big deal in the 90s. The guy
unbelievable.
Wrestled Stone Cold at WrestleMania. Not only that, he was once very, very briefly Intercontinental Champion. And when I say briefly, it's not even in the history books. But go on the network, check out, I wish I could remember the date, but it's Monday Night Raw sometime in early to mid 1996. He's in a match with Goldust. Goldust brings the belt into the ring. The ref gets knocked out. And Savio uses the belt, hits Goldust. The ref makes the 3 count, but there's another ref on the outside of the ring, and the title gets vacated. But there was about a 2-minute window there where Savio held the Intercontinental Championship, and then in 1995 he was also King of the Ring finalist. So very cool to have Savio on last week. So Savio, if you're listening, thank you again.
So when the internet was growing and developing, and you had the Internet Fan, and I think your number one wrestling website then was Woo Wrestling. I don't even think you're old enough to remember Woo. Unbelievable. Anyway, when that started, guys like myself and the people that I was spawned from, i.e. Jerry the King Lawler, Jim Cornette, guys like that were like, the internet killed the business, you know? And in a sense I could see, but it's not about killing the business. It's about pop culture, you know, adapting. So, that being said, the statements you just said are awesome because that's what the fan or the educated fan appreciates, you know, and knows about, like a Savio Vega. What you don't know is the other things, if you can, you know, see the forest through the trees. I just had a real proud look on my face because I was able to apply that statement to something that made sense. There might never have been an Austin 316 if Savio Vega hadn't carried a young, nervous Steve Austin when he first got to World Wrestling Federation. There might not have ever been a big push for Dustin Reynolds, who was green and not seasoned, when Vince just came up with that Goldust gimmick until he'd worked with Savio Vega. And before you saw Steve Austin on WWE, where they used their media outlets to promote him, he worked 100 or more house show matches with a guy like Savio Vega. Same thing with Dustin Rhodes, you know. So those are the type of things that I think, going back to my statement about the internet, now I say to myself, thank God for the internet, because eventually, and I think it's starting to happen now, the internet fan, the educated fan, the IWC, the internet wrestling community, wants this type of information instead of just that part. Now that the curtain's been lifted, at the end of the day, your guys like Savio Vega may end up getting the accolades that they deserve. You know? What do you think of that?
No, I agree. And I really hope a guy like Savio if not the Boricuas, show up in the Hall of Fame one day, because Savio. A lot of people don't know, but I mean, there was a little text blurb about it on the video podcast, the video version of the podcast. But Savio actually started in WWF in 1993. Savio he first came in as TNT.
Yeah, that was his gimmick from the island, which he explained to us. They pulled it from somebody who fizzled that gimmick in Mexico.
And then they put him under the mask and gave him to Harvey Whippleman, and he worked as Quang. Yeah. And he was a very convincing ninja.
Look at the size of him then, too. Which, Savio is built big. He's a thick guy. He was in shape. He's always been in shape. He's always been an incredible athlete for a thick guy. But look at how he moved as Quang.
Absolutely, and I mean that guy could throw a hook kick like nobody else.
Yeah.
And then in 1995, he took off the hood and he became the Savio Vega that WWF fans like myself from the 90s remember.
Yeah, and when Vincent invented those factions, the
factions. I think that was. It was sad to see guys like Savio kind of get lost in that shuffle, because during that time in 97, you had, I mean, on the undercard alone, you had 4 different factions. You had the Boricuas, you had DOA, you had the Nation of Domination, of which Savio was an original member. Then you had
an original member was Jamie Dundee and Wolfie D, PG-13 too,
and the Truth Commission, which is what. Kind of spawned into the later on. Kind of spawned into the oddities, but then not even on. You had 4 on the mid card, and then in the main event picture, you also had DX, which was starting to emerge, and the Hart Foundation. So I think Savio and Miguel and all those guys, they just unfortunately kind of got lost in the shuffle.
Well, and in that, it was just too out of hand, But another thing I want to point out is you can look at those matches and any variation, if it's tags or singles and all, guarantee you out of that bunch of people, Savio Vega and Miguel Perez Jr. were carrying the rest of those guys inside the ring, and that's probably factual.
Yeah, and it's not hard to find that content on the network right now. I mean, honestly, even just start going back, watch WrestleMania 12, Savio versus Austin. The first WrestleMania match for both of those guys. I mean, it's such a good match. And there's nothing super flashy about it. No. It's a straightforward wrestling match, but it's
roller coaster ride.
It's compelling.
It's the roller coaster ride.
And the people love Savio because they hated Austin, because Austin at the time was the $1 Million champion with DiBiase, which is another huge mark for Savio's career, because he got to work with Ted DiBiase.
Yeah, because he even said that. So, that being said, now, like I was talking about with pop culture and evolving and the internet wrestling community, fact-checking seems to be a popular topic these days. So what I did, right after you left, I didn't even tell you this because I wanted to discuss it here first. I went ahead and I called Luke Williams to fact-check, our conversation with Savio. One of the things I want to tell you in regards to disclosure and fact-checking, Savio said he went to work in Louisiana. When he said that, what he meant was he went to work, and I thought it was that Indy promotion I was telling you about, not Indy, not Outlaw, a small territory that closed down. He was actually going to work for Bill Watts, who was running Louisiana and Oklahoma. Luke took him from the island to bring him to Watts' territory. And Savio, I don't even know if he was ever on Universal Wrestling Federation or Bill Watts' television, but he's on those house shows for a year to learn how to work so they could bring him back to the island as TNT and try to get him over. So that's so funny because Savio's English is good, but he's out of practice. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. It's not his first language. He uses English when he goes to like MLW once a month or so, So when he was speaking, I'm trying to understand, and his English his Spanish or Spanglish wouldn't let him remember. No, he remembered. Wouldn't allow him to state it was for Bill Watts in Oklahoma and UWF. And your educated fan knows who Bill Watts is. They might not know a lot about him because that stuff's not out there, but they were one of the first, if not the first, wrestling company to syndicate their television. So, it's funny because you got to. I'm talking to Savio, whose English is good, but again, it's not habit right now. Then I'm calling Luke Williams and nobody can understand the fact check, so that's even more hilarious. I hope that people can appreciate that. The other thing I learned from Luke was... It was something else we were talking about in regards to Savio. Oh, the other reason I want to say about Louisiana is so I didn't have to... I did not ask those questions because I was generally confused myself. I'm not trying to get myself over. Our paths definitely did not almost cross back then because he was working for Bill Watts, which is actually a few years before I went to Memphis, you know. Oh, the other thing I heard from Luke Williams, and this is friggin' awesome too. When I broke into the business and I could prove I had something to offer and I was working every night and earned my spot in the last full-time territory for USWA, Handsome Jimmy Valiant really took a liking to me, first as a human being. Him and Junkyard Dog loved the fact that I would show up, keep my mouth shut and let somebody talk to me, work my fucking ass off, be the first one fucking there, you know what I mean? Stay out of the bullshit, the drama, the ribs, all that stuff. It was business. I treated it like business. They liked that, and they both approached me with the same offer. Junkyard Dog paid for the hotel and gas, but Jimmy paid for the gas. If I would drive the 3,000 miles for the following week, you know. One of the first things Jimmy told me was the business goes in cycles. And they're usually 5 to 10 year cycles. After you finish your first, you know, it's usually the opener down there. Get cleaned up, get up here, and go sit in the bleachers away from the fans and write down everything you fucking see because the business is about to change. You're going to see things that will be invaluable that you'll never see anywhere else again. And I did that, you know. I did that with the exception of a few times hooking up with a groupie that I just couldn't resist, you know. I didn't like Jerry the King Lawler because the way he carried himself and how hard he was on the new guys that got there, but he certainly wouldn't have known that. I kept my mouth shut, you know what I mean? But god damn, the things that I saw were just unbelievable in his finishes and the matches and the way he would carry people with literally no fucking experience whatsoever in the fucking ring, you know? The optimization. Junkyard Dog would cost them this much. If they brought in, and Jerry Lawler was the first one to accept the Leatherface gimmick, a green kid that they could pay $350 a week instead and draw the same fucking money if Lawler could carry him, get him over, and fuck, it was amazing. So, Luke told me a story about after Bruiser Brody died, which we talked about 2 podcasts ago.
Which is now on YouTube, if you want to check it out for free on YouTube.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good fucking...
It was informative.
Thanks, man. It's informative, but it wasn't just like a shock value. Let's talk about a popular topic, you know. But anyway, the business in Puerto Rico was down for 10 years after Brody's stabbing. I didn't know that.
I didn't either.
Yeah, I didn't either. And Luke is funny because he acts like, you know this, mate. You fucking know this. I'm like, mate, I don't know this. You know, he told me that they were drawing 400 fucking people at the WWC, and then there was only one company then, anniversary show, the Anniversario. And how do you say it in Spanish? Pronounce it?
I couldn't tell you.
The anniversary show. It's the big show every year.
Soy muy gringo.
It only drew 400 fucking people. You know?
It's
Which
insane.
even today, out of habit, that show will draw. That anniversary weekend will draw, especially the big show, you know? I had no fucking idea that business was that bad because of what happened to Brody and that it was dead for 10 years. So Luke and Butch were finishing up a bushwhacker run for Vince. There was a few months left, maybe a year on their contract, and Vince hadn't been using them. And I've told you before, and I wish people, again, when you go back to lifting the curtain and see things like we just talked about Savio Vega being indirectly or directly responsible in the careers and the pushes of Gold Dust and Steve Austin. Luke, listen to this one. He's working for Vince. He's finishing his contract up, but Vince isn't using them. They just didn't fit into anything, and they were getting that year's version or that generation's version of, we have nothing for you. We can't come up with anything, okay? So Luke gets a hold of Vince and asks him, and probably through Gorilla, because Gorilla Monsoon had ties to Puerto Rico and Carlos, he asked, well, if you're not going to use us, can we still get paid and go down and work for Carlos? You know? And Vince allowed them to do so. No, that shit doesn't happen today. There's no way Vince is going to allow anybody, even a small company, help get over, you know? So they went down there, and down there, they were the sheep herders, some bloodthirsty, borderline, devil's rejects, almost killers in the motherfucking ring. You know anything about the sheep herders?
I do.
What do you know?
Mostly based on, you know, what I've heard. What I heard at their Hall of Fame induction. That's my primary source, and then a few stories here and there from you along the way. Also, you know, watching some short interviews with Luke on YouTube. But I know that they were one of the biggest heel tag teams probably in the world when they were running with the sheep herder gimmick.
Yeah, dude. Sheep herders were fantastic. What was probably... look who's calling here. Old Casey James.
Casey James on the phone.
Hello!
What's up,
Dude.
What are you doing?
We're doing the podcast, and now you're on it.
Oh, no.
How are you, asshole?
Good. What's new?
Nothing. I just was thinking about that unemployment, you know, from WWE. And
You trying to collect?
am I trying to what?
You trying to collect?
No. No, it's just weird. It's just funny how that went
Well,
down.
From what I understand, they opened up the guidelines on it. 1099s can collect now. They're a lot looser.
So, was your address considered Kentucky then?
Huh?
Your address when you applied for unemployment, was your address Kentucky?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was Kentucky.
Because I got my unemployment from when I was working for TNA through the Tennessee Labor Board.
Or did you collect unemployment from TNA?
Yeah, I got severance and I collected unemployment. But again, I wasn't talent. I was an employee when I was working there. So I don't know. I'm just wondering how that happened. That's a big deal because in the history of wrestling, dude, that's never happened.
Yeah, I know. Because you weren't talent, you were salary, you were like office.
Yeah, I was an employee. I was entitled to it. But if memory serves, you got your notice when I was in Puerto Rico and we were trying to figure out a way to get you down to Puerto Rico.
Give me 1 second.
Okay.
All right, sorry, go ahead.
So if memory serves, I was getting unemployment.
Am I really on the podcast? Fuck you, dude. Are you serious, dude? I really don't want to do that, man. Come on.
Why? It's not about burying anybody.
Come on. Really?
We're not going to bury no one.
Are you serious? Am I really on it?
Dude.
No, I'm going to call you later then.
Why?
Because I don't fucking do that, dude.
How come? Why are you trying to keep a low profile?
All right, man. I'll talk to you later.
All right, I'll call you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Not a fan of the podcast, I guess.
We'll go into that after I finish the Luke story. No, it's not that. He's just a very humble kid, and the other part is he'd like to have some notice, you know, because we caught him off guard.
Yeah.
But also the other thing with Casey or Kurt is he doesn't want to piss anybody off, and he has listened to the podcast enough, though. That's not the thing here is to bury anybody. Unless you're a fucking jagoff and you have it coming, I'm not going to bury you. I'm not going to sit here and cry and bitch and moan about the who are those guys that Jim Cornette's always attacking, the super kickers.
Oh, Young Bucks.
Yeah, I'm not doing that. Not that I'm bashing that. I'm saying I don't want to do that. That's being done. So we'll go back to this Casey and WWE unemployment later. What happens here is Luke does that. They go down and shock fucking IWA Puerto Rico, a place where the sheep herders had been drawing money and like just short of killing Puerto Ricans at that point for 15, 20 years as Vince's babyface bushwhackers. And they come in and they work 6 weeks and establish themselves as babyface bushwhackers. You have to understand this, man. When I was down there the first time in probably 2004, 2003, the fans were still throwing rocks at fucking Luke, and he hadn't performed there in years. You know what I mean? When we were leaving the building, they were fucking on the hill whipping rocks at us because of Luke's heat. So they go down there as baby faces, and they turn and they get the trust and love of the Puerto Rican fan, okay? Then, after the 6-week angle, they fucking turn on Invader, okay, to get Vader back over. The man who killed Brody, the man responsible indirectly or directly for what they would say in Memphis and probably said in Puerto Rican Spanish, killing the territory. They turned Bushwhacker to sheep herder on Invader, and they did what they used to do where they would fucking crucify him and tie him up in the cage just like they would Christ and beat him fucking bloody. Fast forward 6 weeks after that, during the angle and the build of that, they went over the course of a year from 400 for the anniversary show to 11,000 fucking fans.
That's insane.
I know!
That is insane. Mm-hmm. Well, it like you said, it shows you how impactful that sheep herder gimmick was. And the fact that they were still throwing rocks at Luke and Butch, you know, years after the fact. And, you know, fans today like to talk about old school heat, how some of today's guys have old school heat. That's old school heat right there, when the fans are trying to kill you.
Well, again, I'm going to go back to the pop culture and lifting the curtain and the internet wrestling community. The internet wrestling community has no idea. Think about this for a second. That's heat. That's creativity. How that transcends in today is the fact of Luke's fucking brilliance, and people don't know that. They think he's just some gimmick, head-licking, weird-walking motherfucker from World Wrestling Entertainment. I promise you that if his English was better, you could sit a Luke Williams with those fucking writers or Vince's creative team, and if you met in the middle, that is exactly what today's fan wants. You understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So Luke's an unsung hero, man. He's an unsung hero. He's amazing. But all that idea was fucking Luke's. All that networking was Luke's. Whatever your favorite show is, and I like shit like Prodigal Son, for example. I'm going to use that one. The twists and fucking turns are what has me addicted to that show. I don't tweet about fucking television shows. I don't tweet much about wrestling outside of our shit. I fucking tweet and talk to every Tuesday, Monday Night Live on Twitter with goddamn Lou Diamond Phillips, who appears on fucking Prodigal Son because the show is so compelling. This was Luke Williams in fucking probably the late 80s, early 90s, doing that same compelling shit. And I'll bet you those goddamn writers are making more money writing for the Prodigal Son coming up with this shit than Luke was. Then he networked that shit and got Vince to say, yeah, okay, you could go down and help the island and finish off and we'll keep paying you shit. Do you see what I'm saying? That's just amazing. I mean, think about that for a second. The versatility, you know? Nothing? You got nothing on that? That was brilliant.
I was readjusting my seating, man. I'm slipping back on this couch here.
Cool.
Plus, Sox is all the way on the other side. I think he's pissed I took his seat.
Yeah, Sox is the cat. He's Catzilla. This cat weighs 30 pounds.
But no, I mean, watching the Bushwhackers growing up and, you know, being in that age group that I am, I knew them as those, you know, happy-go-lucky, you know, head-licking. And the head-licking is what gets me ever since, you know, I heard from you that, you know, about how clean Luke is.
Oh, it's funny.
So it's kind of funny to think of, you know, this really clean guy, you know, going around licking random kids' faces. But anyway.
If you looked real close, though, guys like him and Handsome Jimmy used to kiss everybody, I don't think they actually ever really made contact. They were just so good at it, it looked like they were doing it. He may have really licked Butch as a rib or something, but I think he turned his head and the tongue came out and you didn't know the difference. You know what I mean? If I'm not mistaken, you know. So, anyway, that's the kind of shit I'm talking about that I wish more people would see and talk about. Maybe us talking about it will get this kind of shit out there, because there's just so many unsung heroes that have changed the tone of professional wrestling. Luke Williams, Savio Vega, how everybody's intertwined and connected. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, definitely. And, you know, there's so many, because I mean, you know, how far back does, you know, sports entertainment as we know it really go? You're talking, you know, what, 60, 70 years. how many guys have come along in that era? And this is something that I've thought about, a long time before we ever started talking about it today. It's just like, how many guys don't get the credit they deserve, but who were integral and actually significant pieces in getting the industry to where it is today?
Yep.
And what's sad is so many of them, most people will never know their names.
Nope, that's the thing. Billy Joe Travis. If you ever get a chance, look up Billy Joe Travis on YouTube. You can't find his best stuff, but you find enough great stuff between Dallas and Memphis and Puerto Rico. Now he drew down there too. Fuck, what a worker! What a fucking hand, man. He was one of the best hands that ever lived.
Mm-hmm. And then other guys like Bill Dundee. I think you could throw in there.
Bill's booking and Bill's work was unbelievable. There would not have been he never would have got the notoriety that he got, William Regal, if it hadn't have been for Bill Dundee.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right, because Bill was...
Bill brought him in as he was part of the booking committee for WCW. Then he put himself with him because he liked them and saw something in there and helped that guy in all of his matches for the first at least year, possibly two, to develop his style into storytelling style, which is, the American style, which got him over.
Yeah, and ever since you mentioned him, I started watching more of that of Memphis in the late '80s, early '90s. His stuff with John Tatum and just like
that's UWF. That was Bill Watts.
That was Watts. Okay.
That shit you're watching, Savio was probably in the opening match that night.
I'll have to go back and look at that, because would he have been? He
wouldn't have been on TV.
He wouldn't have been. Okay.
No, I don't think they put him on TV. He was there as a favor, getting paid whatever, and giving Bill Watts what he needed in the opener second match, which is a good, tight, solid match. He probably got over, not like the Guerreros were down there, meaning Hector and Chavo Sr., but they weren't always on TV either. But they were on there to draw and give a good, solid, tight undercard. And I'll bet you your opener would have not been televised. It would have been called a dark match later and today. But Savio probably worked with Hector, Mondo, or Chavo Sr. in the opener before TV.
Now that's something that would be really cool to dig out from
That's
some
the
vault
shit
somewhere.
that isn't available anywhere. It's available nowhere, and that's what sucks.
Yeah.
As a learning tool, geez, if anybody could see those. That's where the real learning was for us back then. Honest to God, was the house shows. The things you could do in a house show with somebody you never met before, and you got to do 30 minutes. You know what I mean? Unbelievable, Never met him, never talked to him, don't get the finish or the time until you get to the fucking ring. Make it work. If you're the shits, your shit can. We got 100 other guys to bring in. Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's not really anything today's, like even indie guys have to really worry about.
Oh, indie guys. I'm not going to single out anybody. I'm just going to say God bless them, they think they're wrestlers. They think they know what they're doing. You know what I mean? Because they stay in that shallow pond. I think they have a clue after a while that, hey, man, this isn't exactly what I think it is. They do things to get over for their friends and family and their extended friends and family. And then the friends and family, after those people get burned out of the new guys that they train that are primarily forced to sell tickets so they can book in the first place. But those fans know who they are because the ones that sold them the tickets basically tell them, that's my trainer, cheer for him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He helped me, he's my friend, It's not about, they don't do it to draw money. They don't have a clue what drawing money means. They've heard the term, they don't know what it means. They see the spot of the week, and there really is this fucking thing out there. Like you could cram that spot into whatever the fuck you upload it to Insta with, and these assholes, the spot of the week, I don't know the name of it exactly, but I've seen this. It goes around, and they all do the same fucking thing that upcoming Saturday night in their match. So that's how I know it's the spot of the week. Yeah. Hey man, did you see that? Yeah, I saw it. 5 other assholes did it the same time you did. And you all stole it from somebody who did it on some form of TV. You know what I'm saying? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and there's a distinction that needs to be made here, because I know some people are probably going to hear this and be like, "Oh, they're bashing indie wrestling," and it's like
I didn't mention nobody individually.
But there's a line. There's a line. This isn't bashing people who work for independent wrestling companies. there's a distinction. You've got pro wrestling, and then you've got indie wrestling. And indie wrestling is what we're talking about.
And indie wrestling is terrible for the fucking business, period. It's terrible for somebody that is a real wrestling company because you just they kill off the interest. People know what they're watching. They're trying to be nice. Eventually they burn out and stop going. You know what I mean? But the problem is they won't try anything else. You know, the number of people that are killed off that gave it a chance is a lot greater than the ones that give it a chance and say, okay, I'm going to go give this one a chance. It hurts us, you know?
Yeah, and you know what really irritates me is the fact that there's so many independent companies out there.
Oh my God.
But it's formulaic in that they're either trying to be a mirror of WWE or they're trying to be so far removed from WWE that they end up doing the opposite of whatever WWE is doing, and in that they lose their identity.
Okay.
They're not trying to forge any sort of unique identity to say, you know, hey, we are such and such a company, and here's what we have to offer.
Well, there's no brand, and I think CM Punk is actually on record saying that if ROH at its peak, and then it was CM Punk, Samoa Joe, I forget everybody that was
Punk, Joe, Austin Aries would have been there at the time.
Yeah, he was young. Nigel was young. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is at their peak popularity, they all said, and Punk said, they never would have left ROH if they just would have got a piece of the DVD sale. He never would have went to WWE because he would have thought he was happy.
Yeah.
You know, so shame on ROH for not trying to figure out a way to optimize that and make it work. So, you inadvertently spun. What was the last thing you said before I went into about the indies, right?
Yeah, about how most indie companies, and the reason that indie wrestling differs from simple independent pro wrestling like we offer is, most indie companies, quote unquote, they either try and mirror WWE or they try and be as far removed from WWE as possible. And either way, they don't forge their own identity. Then they don't offer anything unique.
And the reason I brought that up is because what happened to ROH after that is the next group of guys that came in that tried to get over, or their top talent. And I told them at the time, Kerry Silken, that you're diluting your brand. There's no brand now because you aren't a team. The individuals meant more than the company. And that shouldn't be, because they would go out there and work for everybody and anybody, because ROH had nothing to keep them exclusive.
Right.
You know what I mean? And a piece of the fucking tape or merchandising them properly would have been a great thing. Might have been a game changer. So let's spin that now, because you inadvertently spun it back to a guy, Casey James. Do you think that Casey James would have wanted to work for Ring of Honor when he was young? When he was young, I'm sure he would have. Who made more money? Now, this is what I'm saying. Before they went to World Wrestling Entertainment, Casey James or CM Punk. And CM Punk, I gave CM Punk his first professional match. His first handful of professional matches, okay? Casey James did, because he was down in Puerto Rico knowing how to work, not being an indie guy, and was in at least the semi-main and most of the time main event, actually drawing a good portion of that 15,000 people monthly at Roberto Clemente Stadium to see this kid. See what I'm saying? What's the difference between him and your typical indie guy today? They're never going to draw or understand what drawing money means. And it's just let's go back to Casey now, since we're talking about Casey. The reason Casey called was I was asking him this, and this was back in, I don't know when. You'd have to, 2007 maybe? 2008? Casey worked for World Wrestling Entertainment after a 2-year run in Puerto Rico for 7 years. They started out teaming him and Austin. Who again?
He was known as Idol Stevens
at
the time.
Stevens.
He later became Damian Sandow.
They were teaming them, and they were working with first Kid Cash and Spanky, and then it was Paul London and Spanky, and they were the first team that Michelle McCool managed. But whatever reasons, they didn't get over it. It didn't get over. They split him, but he was able to stay in the payroll for 7 years after that because he was a worker. So what I'm talking about is Casey was the first and only, to my knowledge, guy who, when he got his notice from World Wrestling Entertainment, I was down in Puerto Rico, and I was partnered up with Savio and Miguel in IWA Puerto Rico. We were trying to bring Casey back in and find a way to do it because we didn't have any money to work with, and he was a familiar gringo. You know what I mean? So on a whim and a prayer, I says, what can it hurt? Apply for unemployment. I'll be goddamned if he didn't get it. So I had just called him earlier today to ask him what that time frame was, and I figured I'd put him on the podcast because he called with the answer too late, and I still don't have my answer yet. But I'll get my answer later when I call him back.
He's going to kick your ass for that.
No, he'll be cool. It's just going to take some finessing. Like I say, at his core, he's a really shy guy. You know, when he was in Puerto Rico, when he first got there, if you pay attention to our podcast at all, this brilliant guy, Luke Williams, he's a fucking character and a half. You'll never meet anybody like Luke Williams. When God made Luke Williams, he broke the fucking mold. So Casey was so quiet and shy for the first 6 months he was down there. Luke would call me and say, that fucking kid is retarded, mate. He's retarded. Stop standing up for him. He's a fucking idiot. He's retarded. But damn it, mate. Once he steps through those ropes, he's a fucking genius. You know what I'm saying? And it took about a year for him to open up because a guy like Luke, when he was 18, 19 years old, would terrify him, i.e. John Moxley, the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, but Luke thought he was retarded until, you know, just because he was quiet and he couldn't understand him and stuff. You know what I mean?
Kind of saw him as a, what's the word? Savant.
Oh, my God. That's so funny, man.
Oh, that's hilarious. Mm-hmm. That's hilarious.
Yep. But anyway, it also gives me hope for the island, too.
Oh, yeah. And you know what? And I know we plugged it last week. I know Savio plugged it. But seriously, go on YouTube, check out IWA Puerto Rico.
Shit, the production's outstanding.
Even if you don't speak Spanish, I mean, the commentary, it's not going to hold it back at all. I mean, The wrestling is phenomenal.
And even though you can't speak Spanish, I guarantee you, and you tell me if I'm wrong, weren't you fucking captivated by the vignettes and promos for fucking Savio not being able to understand what the fuck he's saying even?
Definitely.
You know what I mean? I mean, that Savio, fast forward 54 years old, 55 years old, you know? Is Miguelito on any of this footage that you saw?
Not that I saw, but then again, I just dug into it, a couple days after we recorded the last podcast.
Miguel Perez Jr. is a fucking second generation wrestler. His father was Miguel Sr. Miguel Sr. and... Damn it, I'm such an asshole because I can't remember his tag partner, but I'll have this information for you next time. We're favorites and babyface tag team for Vince Sr. They drew so much money. At a Christmas party, I guess Vince Sr. used to have an annual Christmas party. He actually presented those fucking guys gold belts, gold tag belts to commemorate their run.
Damn.
Yeah. So anyway, Miguel and Savio, outstanding fucking workers. Workers that today's casual fan has never heard of, but fuck. Those guys can have a match with anybody, and not just have a match with anybody, make that shit compelling, and you'll see things you've never seen before in wrestling.
Mm-hmm. And I'm someone who likes to watch wrestling with the sound off anyway, so I'm not swayed by the commentary or crowd reactions. And the stuff they're doing, and even some of the older stuff, if you go on their channel, you can find stuff from like the early 2000s. I watched a match earlier this week, just a couple of days ago before we recorded this, in fact. It was 2002. Ray Phoenix and Ricky Banderas. The match starts, and like 3 minutes into the match, it starts pouring down rain, and I mean tropical storm kind of pouring down rain.
Doesn't it make it dramatic as fuck?
And they never stopped. I mean, in this country, baseball gets delayed and canceled because of rain.
But that's island. They're not going to stop business because it's the fucking storm season.
And they're wrestling in literally puddles of water. They suplex each other. It's a splash.
It's fucking awesome. They tried to replicate that in the old movie, and it was dramatic there. Oh, god damn it. It was a Stallone movie, wrestling movie. Paradise Alley. Unbelievable fucking wrestling movie. Everybody's got to see Paradise Alley. It's fucking great. But they tried to replicate that on this big Christmas night show where Terry Funk was in that fucking movie. He was the top heel in that movie. You wouldn't even recognize Terry Funk because he's fucking hairless. I don't even think he has eyebrows. He plays Frankie the Thumper. It's fucking outstanding. Ray Stevens, Terry Funk, and some other greats did the wrestling scenes in that movie, and it's fucking outstanding. But they tried to replicate that reign on Christmas night in Hell's Kitchen, suplex into the puddle. I mean, it was fucking great shit.
I think, and I'd have to go back and watch for sure, but I think there's even a part where Ricky's getting a comeback, and he like rears back, opens his arms, and does like this roar, this roar that he does. And I think fans of TNA in the mid 2000s when he was there as Judas Messias would remember this. I'm pretty sure a clap of thunder happened at that exact moment.
Exactly right. Lightning fucking happened. Thank you, sir. I didn't know that was fucking. Send me the fucking link.
Yep, absolutely.
Now this is the beauty of Ricky Banderas, El Macias. Okay, the island is primarily Catholic, and Catholic for Italians and the Spanish-speaking world can be borderline superstitious because you got angels involved and demons involved. You know what I mean? And I ain't judging Catholicism. The only thing I didn't like is the way people twist it, like my mother. But anyway, so that was Ricky's character. At first he was the devil or a vampire, and then when they turned him babyface, Ricky Banderas was an archangel. What you saw there, when Ricky goes to lay his arms up, was fucking lightning striking behind him, and that fucking island all believed, the fans believed, and the ones that didn't believe wanted to believe because it was so catchy, that he was sent from fucking God to fight evil.
Oh my god.
Dude, the star power of that motherfucker at his peak on the island was unfucking believable.
And you could not plan something like that. I mean, it was almost serendipitous. And I mean, I remember the first time I saw Ricky was was on that MTV show in the mid 2000s when they were trying to get into wrestling.
That was terrible.
Mixing music and wrestling. Wrestling Society X. That was the first time I ever saw Tyler Black, Seth Rollins too. But that was the first time I ever saw Ricky Banderas. He worked a couple of shows with them feuding with, I think, Vampiro. Yeah. But he showed up in they called him Ricky Banderas. They called him by his real name, but he was the El Macias character. He had the milky lenses. He was doing the blood. And,
that was all part of it and watered down. He had some outstanding fucking gear to go along with that Archangel shit. Now, that being said, they drew a lot of money with Vampiro. He was one of the evils that Ricky would fight. He was a gringo from Mexico, a vampire. Vampire's evil. It's a demon. They drew a lot of great money together in Puerto Rico, and then they would do things like Team Vampiro, where Vampiro saw the light because of the Archangel and shit, and it was fucking outstanding, creepy-ass fucking shit. I mean, like Devil's Rejects level shit, So, not to be a jagoff and whatever, I don't give a fuck who gets pissed at me at this point, and I'm not bearing anybody, but the difference between Wrestling Society X, which was booked by Vampiro, was putting Vampiro versus Ricky when the animals are running the zoo and booking it themselves. And this is what I'm talking about again with the Indy bullshit. Everybody, including myself, always does a better fucking job when I'm being booked by someone, and all I got to worry about is how we're going to get there in the most compelling fashion. And that's just a good example because that shit tapered off. It was dead in the water.
Yeah, it only lasted a few weeks from what I remember. I mean, like I said, it was the first place I saw I saw guys like Ricky, I saw guys like Seth Rollins, Teddy Hart, but
they were all aging themselves, man, and that's why it was the shits.
Yeah. Back then you couldn't have told me any different, but unfortunately I have that double knowledge of, that double-edged sword of knowledge right now.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it like an opinion-based, I'm saying it like a fact or business-based. If MTV2 or MTV whatever had the money to produce wrestling, god damn it, I wish they would have contacted somebody that wouldn't go in there with their fucking ego as the motivator and fucking give the country that alternative it's clamoring for, that there's room for. The wrestlers need a viable alternative. The fans need a viable alternative. Vince knows it or not, he needs a viable alternative, and he can't create his own viable alternative via SmackDown or NXT. Yeah. Guys got to have a place to go, and it makes everybody up their fucking game.
Yeah. Well, and the casual fan, I think right now, so many are so disenchanted with, WWE, for the last several years, ever since, they started doing what they call the PG era, they're clamoring for something different. And, AEW was red hot for a time, but I think even they've kind of tapered off a little bit.
Yeah.
And a lot of what they do is, and again, not burying them, but I think a lot of what they do is that anti-WWE stuff I was talking about earlier.
And then go out there and be a worse generic version of a male soap opera. That's our thing. That's our brand. Our brand is the fucking matches, the quality of matches. Our brand is fucking things that have never been done before. Concept matches that actually get over. Concept matches that have never been done before, and everything in the history in the sport of pro wrestling has been done before. You know what I mean? So I take this collaboration of every place I've been. You know what I mean? AWA, WCW, World Class, USWA, NWA, Puerto fucking Rico. You know what I mean? And we put all that shit together, dude, and that's what we've got.
No, and there's a reason why we're called Premier Pro Wrestling. It's not Premier Indie Wrestling. It's not Premier Sports Entertainment. It's Premier Pro Wrestling, because the wrestling always comes first. And we want.
Oh, and TNA. I took some stuff from TNA, i.e., why we're in a studio, and we're not in these other
gym.
Buildings. Exactly.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we have unique, and something that's really served us well during this time when so many other indie companies can't run because they have to rent their spaces, and the spaces are shut down. We at least have a place where we can, tape crowdless. And I think besides WWE, I think maybe we're the only ones doing it right now. I mean, if I'm wrong about that, feel free to leave a comment if you know of another organization that's doing it. But
one that's still around. I've heard of some people that are doing it, but it's a fucking nightmare. It's not as easy as you would think to do it, But the other thing is, I don't want you to force your fucking friends and family to come to every fucking show. I'm not telling you, oh, you're not booked unless you sell 12 tickets. You know what I mean? I don't want to be like my kid's dance class. You know what I'm saying? We draw organically. We draw organically live. We draw organically on Pivot Share. We draw organically on YouTube. And that's the mark of a real wrestling company, when people come because they don't have any emotional investment. They want to be fucking entertained. And if you can hook them, then you can keep them coming back, and that's how you build a wrestling company.
And that brings me to something else I'm going to taper off into right now, because it deserves to be said. And all of you listening, you deserve credit for this. In less than a month, 28 days by YouTube's calculation. That sounds
like some news I don't even know.
We added over 1,000 new subscribers in less than a month, between the end of March and the end of April. 28 days, over 1,000 new subscribers on YouTube.
Nice.
And you guys deserve a lot of credit for that, because you're sharing our content, you're viewing our content, which is making it more, the more views we get, the more popular it's going to be based on YouTube's algorithm or whatever they use, and the more people are going to be exposed to it. So thank you for your part in that. And
again, thank you for that. Like he said, the other thing is this. I don't care if it's 1910 or 1920 or 2020. That sounds better. People love the fucking underdog. They will always love the underdog. Even though that underdog today might be deemed an anti-hero, well, that's what Premier Pro Wrestling is, truly. There's no skeletons in the closets. You're never going to find anything that links back to getting an individual over, getting myself over. You know what I mean? The number one priority to us is the fan, the viewer, the subscriber, the person that buys our T-shirt that thinks that much of us. Do you know what I'm saying? And we're always going to work toward that with no ego involved to sway the end results.
No. And one saying I've always liked that, it's not an official saying, but something that I've heard time and time again is egos at the door.
Yeah.
Our guys work hard to entertain. There is character development there. You got guys like Chase Gosling, who is a complete dick, but the guy works his ass off, and when it comes
innovative as all hell for that size.
Yeah, in character, he makes you hate his guts, but and even Matt Vine. We're talking about ego. We got to talk about Matt Vine, because because I know there's going to be people out there, those naysayers, who say like, well, what about Matt Vine? Matt Vine's an asshole. Yeah, but he's our asshole. And you know what? When it comes time to it,
but look at him, dude. He's finally achieved 230 fucking pounds with no fucking steroids. Look at the build on that guy. Drug free. He's got a better build then I'm going to say 2/3 of WWE's roster.
He's solid.
And he works his ass off. They always say favorites. You know, my favorite has always been and it always will be the one that works the fucking hardest.
Mm-hmm. A little bit of healthy ego is healthy, but it's when it starts...
Self-esteem is healthy. Ego, I can't fucking take it.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
You start... And you know what? How many... In the 7 years this company's been around, how many guys have come in and out, shown their way to the door because they couldn't get their egos in check? And a lot of the guys who have stayed have been the ones who have been able to take that criticism and been able to reel it back.
The ones that are on World Wrestling Entertainment radar, factually, and tentatively, I don't know because I haven't heard the change yet, but they're probably going to have to change it. They're supposed to have tryouts later this year, 4 of them. I'm not going to say who exactly again, but, you know, that's the proof. So why don't we go ahead and end this thing, man? We've been going longer than I thought. This is fun.
But you know what? That's what I love about this. We don't plan it again. We don't plan what we're gonna say.
Call it on the fly. We'll call it in the ring.
Mm-hmm. And you know what? We end up going for 45 minutes to an hour just about every single time, and I love that.
Me too, dog.
I love that. So again, Premier Planet, we want to thank you guys for tuning in. Not only that, we want to thank you for your support. Again, helping us to get to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube in less than a month. We're now over 36,000. We wanted to make it to 40,000 by, I think we said, the end of the summer. I think we're gonna probably even surpass that and be there by midsummer at this point.
I hope so.
And for all your support out there on Patreon, we thank you folks as well. If you guys are listening to this on YouTube a week after the fact, remember this has already been on Patreon for a week, so you're a week behind. Yeah. If you want to access the podcast...
Oh, shit! Tell them about the match that's uploaded to Patreon here, too.
Oh,
so when they're watching on YouTube, if you watch on YouTube after, you're going to also get to see some really cool-ass shit like this.
Yeah. But this match is exclusive to Patreon right now. It's going to be a long time before it gets to PPW On Demand or to YouTube. Right now on Patreon, one of the most exciting kind of concept matches that I think we've ever done, an Olympiad freestyle match. In one corner, you got Tim Castle, who comes to the dance with that collegiate Greco-Roman style wrestling grappling background against Matt Vine.
And a love for the Japanese-style wrestling.
These two guys had 15 minutes to score a pin or submission, but...
I shit you not, this is the best one, that type of style match I've seen.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No. I'm as enthusiastic about it as you are. But in the event that the time limit were to expire before a pinfall or a submission... There was a point system in place, and the way it works is you got 2 points for holding your opponent in a submission hold for at least 10 seconds. You got 1 point for being able to take your opponent down on his shoulders and holding his shoulders down for at least 1 second. And then rope breaks, you could use the ropes to escape from a submission, but it was going to cost you a point. So if the time limit expired before a pin or a submission could be counted, points were going to decide the winner. So it is an incredible concept match, and it really is back to basics. Check it out on Patreon right now. It's available to both our $3 and $5 levels. And if you guys want to hear this podcast a week, the week that it's recorded, instead of having to wait a week and be a week behind when it gets to YouTube, and by the way, when it goes to Patreon, it's also going to be completely ad-free. It's just going to cost you $1 a month. $1 a month gets you 4 to 5 of these podcasts the week they're recorded and completely ad-free. Now, $3 again, that's going to get you at least 2 exclusive matches from our studio taping, and then then $5 is going to get you every exclusive match from a studio taping that we post. So if we decide to do an extra day of wrestling and put everything on Patreon, $3 is going to get you 2 or 3 of those matches, but $5 is going to get you everything. And that's per month. It's not per view. It's $1 per month, $3 per month, or $5 per month. And you know what? Your support goes a long way, folks, in just those small dollar amounts.
I mean, and this is good stuff that nobody else is talking about.
Definitely. And then, of course, make sure you check us out on Facebook. Facebook is your primary go-to for all the news related to Premier Pro Wrestling. We're trying to be better about doing text posts on YouTube as well to keep you guys up to date. Check us out on Insta. Hit us up on Insta, folks. Our Insta is looking really good right now. We're also on Twitter at Premier Planet. There's so many ways you can keep up with us at Premier Pro Wrestling. But until next time, folks, stay safe out there. We hope we can open our doors sooner than later. We'll see how this goes. We're taking it week to week by now. But until then, stay safe, stay tuned, and we will see you later.